Hello, welcome to this channel. My name is Janet. I am working through the King James Bible. Today I'm in the book of Samuel, the very first book, and we are working through chapters 24, 25 and 26 today. So, we're about to begin. Now in Samuel we've had a real battle going back and forth between King Saul and David, who brilliantly triumphed over the huge Philistine giant Goliath. He won, but he has become so successful, David, that the jealousy within Saul has just made him want to pursue him and kill him, which has put David now on the run. We've learned that. He's been running from Saul for a long time. And in chapter 24, this carries on. So again, Saul finds out about where David is. He locates him, and he's in the En Gedi desert. Saul then gets a large group of his men together, his army, and he sets off to find David. Now during the journey, Saul comes into a cave, and unbeknownst to them, they're walking through this cave, but David is in there with his men, and they hide at the sides. And Saul's wandering around in the dark with his men in this cave, and David goes towards the king. He sort of sneaks up behind him and he cuts a part of his garment at the hem at the bottom. He takes a piece of it off. But soon as he's done this, he feels really guilty because he thinks, Saul is a king. He's been anointed by God. It's not for me to do this kind of thing. So he tells his men, do not kill Saul. He refrains them from doing anything. And then as Saul leaves the cave, he's walking out there, David goes out and he shouts towards him, Saul! And Saul turns around and he recognizes David and he bows his head and he says, I am your servant, you are my master. And he says, because of this fact, I chose not to kill you. See here, I've got a part of your garment. I could have killed you, but I chose not to. He then asks Saul, why? Why do you want to kill me? What have I done? And David's chose not to kill him because he wants the Lord to guide this whole situation between them. He doesn't want to act on his own human way. He wants to only act from a place of spirit. Now once David stops talking, Saul says, is that really you, David? And Saul cries, realizing it really is him and that, he is so much better than him because he's chosen not to kill him and he's been so gracious, and he's like, oh. And he tells David this, you're a better man than I am, and you one day will be king. And Saul says, all I ask of you is that you don't kill my family. Please do not kill any of my descendants. And David agrees he will not do this. And then the two depart peacefully. Saul goes back to his kingdom and David goes back to where he was living in the wilderness. And that closes chapter 24. And all the Israelites come together to grieve over him and to bury him in his hometown Ramah. Meanwhile, David is now located to the desert of Paran. And it's here we learn of a man called Nabal, who owns a property there and he's very wealthy. And he has a wife called Abigail. Now his wife is very pretty and intelligent, but Nabal is very rude and arrogant. Now David wanted to find out if Nabal would help out his men because they have been looking after his flocks in a way. They've been stopping any wild beasts getting to them. So he sent some of his messengers to see if Nabal would offer them some food and resources for doing this for him. So David's men go to Nabal and they're very peacefully and they talk to him, and Nabal goes, who is this David? Because he sees him as a fugitive, that he's left his master and that he's not worth any time. So he's just like, forget it, I'm giving you nothing. So David's men come back and tell him what's happened, what Nabal had said, that he's outright refused to give them any food, and this angers David so much so that he wants to kill him. Now Nabal's wife, Abigail, she finds out what David's intentions are, that he's going to come and kill her husband. So she quickly rushes to get some food together for his men, quickly. And she sees them approaching as they're going to kill her husband, and she stops them in their tracks and drops to her knees and says, "Mercy, mercy, please, here's some food, please, you are going to be a wonderful king. You have the Lord on your side, please. My husband, he is so foolish at times, the way he responds. Please have mercy on us. Please don't kill him." And David listens to Abigail, and he sees the truth, and it makes him sort of see what he's doing, that he's maybe acting in anger, and he stops and he says, "Okay, you're right. No, I'm not going to kill you. And thank you for bringing this food to us. We really appreciate it." And then they leave her in peace and they go on their way. Now, when Abigail comes back home, her husband, Nabal, he's got this feast going on, he's drinking, and he's become quite intoxicated. So she doesn't see it a good opportunity to tell him what's just happened. So she waits until the next day, and then she explains. Now, this just makes Nabal so angry at what she's done that he doesn't speak to her for 10 days. And then it says, the Lord smote Nabal, and he dies. Then David hears the news that Nabal has died, and so he calls for Abigail to come to him and to become his wife. Now she hears this and she agrees, and she goes, gets her things ready, and she goes to David and she becomes his wife. It also says, as we close this chapter, that David also marries a woman called Ahinoam. So he ends up with 2 wives. Now Michal, who was David's first wife, she is no longer with him. She has been given by Saul, because she's Saul's daughter, to a man called Philati, and he is the son of Laish. So it seems that when he fled from Saul, that she was left behind, and so this is what has become of her. So this closes chapter 25. Now, as we begin chapter 26, we have the Zipiites, and they're going to Saul and they're telling him that, hey, we know that David is hiding out on a hill in Jeshimon. So Saul, on hearing this, decides to go out and get him, and he takes 3,000 of his soldiers with him. Now they camp out close to this hill on the side. So it's not long before David realizes that all of these men are here and they're coming to hunt him down. So he decides at night to go down to the camp, and he takes alongside a volunteer, Abishai, who goes with him. And it's getting dark as they approach the camp, and they find Saul sleeping outside with his spear in the ground next to him, and all of his men around him sleeping as well. Now David's sidekick, Abishai, says, "Wow, look, the Lord has given us this opportunity now where we can just kill Saul, get his spear and just drive it through." And David, again, that thought process comes over him where he thinks, no, this is a king. He's been anointed by God. I cannot kill him. This is not for me to do. It's for God to choose what happens. So instead, he decides to take his spear and his jug of water, and then they go away from the camp. Now, once they're far enough away, he shouts out to the people, and to specifically Abner, who is Saul's commander-in-chief. And he shouts out to Abner, saying, "How poor a servant are you for not protecting your master, having his spear and water jug stolen." And you can imagine, Abner's like looking around, what? Who's that talking? And seeing that the spear and the water jug's gone. Also, Saul, hearing this voice, he recognizes it's David. And he cries out, "David, is that you?" And David says, "Yes, and why are you here again trying to kill me?" And he asks him, "Was it your people who told you to come here, or was it God? Now, if it's God, I will give up myself to you. But if it's your people, may they be cursed for sending me out to live like a fugitive on the run." Now Saul, on hearing this, apologizes profusely and realizes his foolishness and he's sinned. So he calls forth to David and he says, "Look, I'm not going to harm you. I'm sorry, I'm not going to kill you." And then David suggests, "Why don't you get one of your soldiers to come back here and collect your spear?" And he then says, "Now that I have spared your life, may the Lord bless my life." And Saul says to David, "May you be blessed. You shall do good things and triumph." And then the two part ways and go back to where they came from. So there we have it. David has given Saul 2 chances now to redeem himself, to become the better king, you know, to stop this trying to kill him. He has put his faith in God and he's letting God guide the whole situation. Will Saul do this as well? Well, we don't know. This is what we will find out in the upcoming chapters. So this concludes today's video, and I will be back again tomorrow with more from within the book of Samuel. Thanks for being here. Bye.